All right, everybody, how are you doing? Welcome to the stream. Tonight we're going to record a private citizen. I was originally going to talk about this paper that all those crypto experts released, talking about how, like, when you have end-to-end encryption, looking into the unencrypted stuff and filtering through that. The thing that Apple was proposing is like really bad. And I'm still going to do that, but I moved that topic. I'm going to have to do an extra episode or something. I moved that topic. Tonight we're going to talk about a story I researched this week, which is a lot of fun. Unless you're a security researcher, then it ain't. But I think it's important. It's a German story, but I think it's important for everybody who's privacy conscious. It's very, in some way, it's very special with some German laws, but it also just shows that there's a general trend of companies doing this kind of thing, right? And if you're not in Germany, they might not have the same stupid laws to use, but like the attitude is there, and it just goes to show how far companies go sometimes. And I think it's a very interesting topic. Anyway, I'm gonna start checking everything here. So that we can prepare to do the podcast. Do we have all the alerts muted? As you will know, if you've been here before, when I'm recording a podcast, I'm kind of not, while I'm recording the show, I'm not interacting with Twitch chat as much. I mean, of course, I have feedback in the show, and I like live feedback, but generally not as interacting with chat a lot as if I was going to be playing some video game, obviously. Just to, not... just for the listeners, for the only audio listeners, to not, make it unlistenable for them. Obviously, if this works. Just to, not... Sounds good. Have to check that. That one episode I had to re-record really traumatized me. Still. Anyway, let's get into the topic. It's probably why you're here, and it's somewhat late. Let's do this. Episode 91. Let's see if I can do the intro in one take. That's always the question. We should have betting pools for that, really. Somebody should set that up. Like some is there some Twitch channel like we can do predictions or whatever? I'll need to set that up for next time. So let's do this. You're listening to The Private Citizen, defending your right to have something to hide. This is episode 91 for Wednesday, the 20th of October, 2021. A not-so-modern solution. Hey everybody, my name is Fab. I'm coming to you live from the city of Düsseldorf in North Rhine-Westphalia in West Germany with somewhat of a special, I was going to do another topic, not that you really... Well, I blogged about it, but not that you would know. But I rescheduled. That's going to be another... I'm going to keep promising these special episodes. And I do them from time to time. So I'm going to push that topic back to tonight, today, whatever time it is when you're listening to this. It's night for me. We're going to talk about a company called Modern Solution in Germany. And their approach to a somewhat inadvertent security researcher who disclosed a pretty, kind of like a vulnerability in their software and like a data leak. But wait till I explain to you what the actual vulnerability was, because you'll be picking up your jaw from the floor, and also the reaction to it, which is the most important thing. I thought, this is obviously an international podcast. I try to pick topics that, obviously, I'm in Germany, so German stuff comes up. But whenever I talk about German stuff, I want it to be like, to apply to pretty much anybody, really. And I think this is important enough, or also interesting enough, for anybody to, if you're in another country. There's some, to learn about this, there's some specific German laws that are involved. And you might not have them in the US or whatever. Some people are listening from Russia, from China. So, there'll be some differences. But the general approach of companies towards security research is, obviously I've been writing about IT security for about 6-7 years now. It's pretty universal, and it's not getting better. I don't know. I can't remember. I read this, I wrote about this stuff quite a lot recently, and I read there's some studies. There've been some high profile cases, and there've been recently there's been this there's an industry organization that it's an industry organization of independent security researchers in Paris, and they've basically at a recent meeting asked security researchers what the problems are they are facing, and a lot of them said, well, we disclosed a vulnerability and then we're being threatened with lawsuits. And that surprised the organizers, where I thought this, this was a thing that would happen 10, 15 years ago, maybe. And then a lot of companies, I think, Microsoft famously was very early with this. Was it Katie Masouras who started with this kind of stuff, outreach to the community, and, stopped doing this thing. You disclose security vulnerability, the next thing you get is a cease and desist letter, and they're threatening you with lawsuits and, attorneys and stuff like that. That's not how it should happen. And I guess these people who were organizing this meeting were thinking, we kind of, we thought that was over, but it isn't. So what they actually did is they created this international coalition. They basically want to have lobbyists in starting in Europe, but in parliaments and in, where lawmakers are, and basically lobbying them to have laws that are more friendly to security researchers. And as you will be able to tell later on, we certainly could do with that in Germany, because we have some very unfriendly laws. We have the famous hacker paragraph, which I think I've mentioned before on the show, probably have. But I'm gonna go into that anyway. That's the topic. I originally was gonna talk about this paper by a lot of security and privacy experts, talking about how these side channel attacks on, when you have end-to-end encrypted communication. We talked about this on the show previously as well. The best way to get around that is have it decrypted on the device, so you can basically get access to it there. And Apple was talking about looking through photos before they get encrypted. Of course, to find evil child porn. But this is now security researchers saying why that is bad, and I'm going to get to that. That's going to be the next episode. But I thought this topic was kind of timely, and I've just written about this yesterday and today, so it's fresh in my mind. So I thought I might as well do this episode. So without further ado, why don't we, as Pestly, a game streamer I like to watch, plays a lot of Escape from Tarkov, likes to say, let's crack straight into it. Right, so when we talk about this topic, there are two basically disasters that happened here. There was a initial, I would like to call it the coding debacle, and then there was a PR debacle. So let's start with the coding problem. Let's start with what happened. So, or maybe I'm quickly going to tell you how I came about this story. So earlier this week, I was tasked, as you might know, I'm a freelance journalist. I was tasked with Heise, who I used to work for, and I still write for them once in a while, to research a story that colleagues at the German tech site called Golem, which I've written for as well, a colleague there had written a story about a security researcher who was raided at his home and had his a programmer, kind of inadvertent security researcher. But I'm going to call him a security researcher. When I say that, I don't mean he's working at a university, but he's a hacker, you could say. But that has negative connotations. So these days we say security researchers, right? So just some guy who looked into a security vulnerability. Anyway, so his house was raided, and there was a story about that. So I researched it, I talked to some people, talked to sources, talked to the police. I talked to the state attorney in Cologne, and I wrote a story about it, which had a lot of, which was the factual story. But then, as I'm sometimes apt to do, and I like to do this in stories. And when I was at Heise, especially at Heise Security, there is a thing where we did used to do that, and my colleagues still do it, where you write a factual news story and then you put some opinion in there as well at the end, generally, because I believe in that very much. I've talked about journalism a lot in the show. I think you're not objective. You're trying to be objective, but there's always your own opinion, and I like to be forward with that. And when a story makes me angry, I like to kind of talk about that. Anyway, a lot of that was edited out of the story, which I was originally a bit mad about. I just generally mad. I actually like the guy who edited very much, so I don't blame him at all. And I was thinking about it. I was driving home last night. I spent some time with my grandma, playing games last night. And so I'm driving home and I'm thinking about this, thinking about being mad. And I'm like, he did the right thing, right? So he made this new story more factual, which is a good thing. And then I thought, why, I should write an op-ed. And why didn't I do that from the beginning? Why didn't I immediately pitch them an op-ed as well? So I actually thought, yes, let's pitch them an op-ed, and I did that. And I wrote an op-ed, and that got published today as well. So I'm going to talk about all of this while I'm doing the show. Now, I wrote this op-ed because the story made me very angry, and I'm going to get into that as well. But to get to what actually happened, we need to have some background information. So originally there was a story published in June, which was also in Golem. Heise wrote about it. Der Spiegel wrote about it. And so here's what happened. So in June, some independent programmer who, that's what he says. There's always a thing of he says, she says, that the company is something else. But my story is largely based on the testimony of this guy and the blogger, largely because the company wouldn't talk to me, which often tells you, that they either don't have anything to say or they, whatever they have to say is not very flattering to them. And I kind of, we're going to get into this. I'm going to go into some background in the story, and you realize why I kind of believe the guy. Anyway, so this programmer, independent kind of freelancer, was working with the retailer. And he was tasked to debug a software by a German company from Gelsenkirchen, which is close to here. Gelsenkirchen, by the way, has a very famous suburb called Schalke. That is where the FC Schalke is from. So, in the rural areas, very close to where I'm born and relatively close to where I'm right now in Düsseldorf. Anyway, so there's a company there called Modern Solution. Now, this is funny because, as you will see, the solutions they're doing, this is where the show title obviously comes from. They are anything but modern, but we'll get to that later. Anyway, this is a company called Modern Solution. They make this software, right? And what they do is, so Germany has lots of online retailers, right? Online marketplaces. In Germany, they're called Otto, Kaufland, Check24, Check24. And what they do is basically, they, I think, copied a model that Amazon pioneered this. At some point, Amazon went like, hey, we could have independent retailers put stuff on our marketplace, which we don't have, we don't sell. And then our marketplace gets bigger, right? There's additional goods on there. People will still use Amazon and we'll get a commission. And so they allow people to sell their stuff. And everybody knows this now, right? On Amazon, you actually have to be careful these days that you're not buying from like some Chinese. Not that I'm, prejudiced against Chinese. It's just, it takes like 6 weeks for the stuff to get here because it gets there by boat or something, So in these German market, the big online retailers did the same thing. So they opened like marketplaces. So if you're a retailer in Germany, like you have a small company, let's say you sell stationery, right? And you want to be on Kaufland, then you can do that. They have like an API, whatever. You can have a partner. You probably have a partner agreement or whatever. And basically people can more easily find your stuff online, and then, you can sell more stuff. And because all of these shops have all their different APIs. Like if you're just a small retailer, like you won't be doing, like you have a corner store, right? That's where you're selling stationery. You didn't get into this because you know like server-side back-end programming. So you can hire or you can buy software from a company. One of those companies is Modern Solution, where they give you a software, and what that does is it talks to on your end with your inventory management and whatever customer relations, whatever you have, like your software, and then all those marketplaces, right? So you can go and list on several, and the software takes care of all of that. And so what you put in what you want to sell, that gets listed on the marketplace with the data, the description, everything. And if somebody buys it, so they are a customer with, let's say, Otto, right? And so they Otto has their payment and their all of the information. Now, if they buy from you, Otto needs to send that to you, right? That gets sent over whatever the API to your software, because you need to kind of at least need the address, whatever, you need to ship it to the guy. And in some places, you might also need like their payment information, right? So basically, companies like Modern Solution are, you could say, a middleman, right? They offer this, you pay them, and they offer to make this stuff for you, make this easier for you. Now the problem is this programmer was like, oh, this software isn't working. Like, what's going on? So what he says is what happened. So he does, when I worked in IT support, this is what you do. You have a problem with the software. You don't know really what it does. You put your laptop in the network, right? You open a Wireshark and you go like, let's see what's going on. Like this software is for some reason not communicating correctly. Let's see what happens. And he looks and he goes, this is weird. I do something in the software and it's not emitting any packets. It's not doing anything. Like, how's this working? And he goes, oh, well, I guess I have this HTTP filter on. Maybe it's not communicating, what else? I mean, these days, anything like this, you'd have like a REST API, right? You'd think it'd be HTTP, but he's like, let's turn that off. And so what he notices is this software is actually communicating via SQL, which if you're really old school, that, I think originally SQL was designed for this. You could have a database on the network, and then you could have clients, and then you could send SQL over the network. Nobody does this because it's fucking dangerous. It's SQL, right? It's not encrypted. It's just like it's not really secure. It's like you have direct access to the database. What you do these days is that, of course, you have a server with the database, but you put like an API in front of that has access controls and rights management, right? So that not anybody can just do anything on that database. If you just give them direct SQL access, they can just presumably go, drop table, little Bobby tables, and like your whole data is gone. But apparently that's what these guys did. And not only like on a network, on a local network, no. So you're at this retailer, you run this software, probably installed on a server somewhere, and this talks over the internet, right? Get this. It talks over the internet with a server at Modern Solution, modern Solution, yeah, and does stuff. So that's how they send data back and forth, like unencrypted SQL commands to a remote server. So at this point, you're already going, like, if you know anything about like IT or whatever, you're going, what the fuck, like, what the hell's going on? That's probably what the guys thought. But it gets worse. Not only did they do it that way, with questionable, really no access controls, they also used the same credentials, so the same username and password for everybody. So each of their customers, and we're talking the retailers here, right, had the same account. Right, and they had the same username and password sent over clear text. Like, even if it gets encrypted over the internet because you're TLSing it or whatever, you can just look in your own network traffic and get the username and password. What that means is you can just take an SQL client, connect to the server that is publicly accessible on the internet, take the credentials that you've caught with Wireshark on your network because they're unencrypted, put them in, and then see the database that all the information is in from all these retailers, everything. Like, the inventory, what people are selling, what they're buying, the customers, all the customer data, like their addresses, payment details in many instances, email addresses, everything is just in this one database that anybody could have access to. And this was a situation that apparently persisted for years. We don't know if anybody went in there, either criminals or intelligence services, and scooped this all up. But it's the first thing when I read this is I thought it's a major miracle that nobody abused this, aside from stealing everybody's data, which is bad enough, but didn't mess with other people. Put orders in, delete other orders, just basic high school prank shit like this. Is unbelievable. So the security researcher discovers this in the evening and then spends the whole night looking at this shit and figuring out what happened. And he basically figures out that at least 700,000 customers have their data in here, and that this was probably accessible for years. There was not only that data, there was the ticket system from the company was on this data. It was mad. Astro C in Twitch chat says every layer of this is worse type of anti-security. Yeah, it's literally I'm thinking I did I'm not a programmer, right? But I did some programming. I did some programming in high school in Australia. I had in Australia you can pick whatever you want to do. Basically, you can pick all your classes. I think you have to take math and English, but that's about it. And so I did programming, right? IT. And that was, if you had to code shit like that. If you literally, and this was in the year 2000. And we had assignments. I remember we did we coded an airline booking system where you basically, the customer could pick what seat in an airplane they wanted. And we had to have airplane. We did Delphi. This was Ball and Delphi back in the day. You had a seat plan. We had to do that. And then, enable people to pick seats and then, fill the plane according to how do you do that. You can't put out all the people in the back. You're going to have tail strikes. Shit like that, right? We had big assignments like that. Then we had to, we were in groups of, I think, 4 and had to do this, right? And code this. If we had that assignment to make this interface and we'd done it with SQL over the internet in 2000 in a high school in Australia, I think we would have gotten a fail. I think the teacher would have said, this is, and we didn't really think much about security, but this is obviously a bad idea. Obviously. So it's anything but a modern solution. That it's pretty bad. It's you look at this and it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. It's actually kind of funny. It's one of these stories where it's one of these home videos, right? America's funniest home videos where one thing happened. You're I can't believe that just happened. And then just one guy falls and he slides and then you think, oh my God, he just fell. Then he slides into a support pillar of something. And then the whole thing in the background collapses. And then, I don't know, a car drives by, gets it. But it's like that. It's it's incredible. So this is what happened. This is what basically, so I talked about this first story that was published in June. So this is what happened before the first story got published, right? And so what the underlying, this would be bad enough. This would be a story in itself. I mean, borderline for this podcast, it's privacy related because, big data leak and shit like that. But, it's just an interesting, IT, how not to code software problem. That's one thing. Right, and this is incredibly stupid how they did this. Incredibly stupid. We're talking. This is 2021, right? We were promised we'll be on Mars by now, and we're still doing this shit. So that's already bad. But now we come to the next step where it all gets much worse because now, I just hit the the wrong button. In case you know, if you're listening to a podcast, nothing happened. I hit the wrong camera button. So this happens when you stream stuff live. Anyway, I was gonna play a sting, and I hit the wrong button on my stream. Anyway, now I destroyed my whole smooth radio thing, and of course I'm not gonna edit this out because I like to keep it real. But anyway, so that's bad enough. But now we get to how they handled this publicly, and it gets worse. It gets worse. I actually like that camera review. I didn't know I had this set up. It's kind of cool. So it gets even worse. So okay, so we're talking this guy. He found the security vulnerability. He spends all night. He's like, looking at this shit, and he's like, I can't believe this is happening. He doesn't know what to do. So he goes and contacts a blogger who is relatively well known in this like German e-commerce scene. And especially with people who do something like this B2B this kind of stuff. So the blogger goes, I think what you should do is you should contact this company first. Like the blogger was like, I'm happy to write about this. This is horrible, but I think you should contact the company. So this programmer goes and writes an email to this company. And they provide them with proof, what happened, stuff like that, with the vulnerability. And this company goes and says, basically, I don't really know what they said. They also didn't tell me, but they're kind of, according to the other people involved, they were kind of dismissive and said, there's no security vulnerability. We're not even sure this exists. This is bullshit. So the blogger goes. And also, he rings up the company and goes, look, you've been contacted by this guy. I'm going to write about this. This is horrible. Please fix the security vulnerability. And they do the same thing. They go like, there's no security vulnerability. Terrestrious Jim, I'm just going to interrupt myself here. Terrestrious Jim says, when I read about it, I thought to myself, that would have been a case where journalists actually could have helped. Had he told the journalists, they could have published it. This way, they would have protected the identity of the guy and taken the heat. Yeah, this I'm gonna address this, by the way. What I think about this. Yes, so I think one of the problems is that he contacted this blogger who wasn't. He writes a lot about this stuff, but I think he seems not to be. I don't want to kind of insult the guy because I think he's a good guy. But I think he didn't handle this as a professional journalist would have done, for better or worse. I'm going to explain later how I would have done this. Anyway, so this blogger goes and contacts them, and they give him the runaround as well. So at this point, the programmer and the blogger, they're kind of just talking about what to do. And, they're in the process of, obviously collecting all the data and making sure they can prove that this really happens. So what happens is the server vanishes off the internet. So the company obviously knew exactly what was the problem and decided to, because obviously there was a data leak and they were suddenly, oh shit, now people know about it. Or maybe they were so incompetent that they didn't realize until they got told, and had a weird response to it. But they turned the server off. Now the blogger and the security researcher go, well, now the vulnerability doesn't exist anymore, right? So now we can go public. This is generally what's called in IT security a ethical or responsible disclosure. You tell somebody that they have a security vulnerability, you wait for them to fix it, and then you go public. You do this because if you go public before it's fixed, obviously bad guys can exploit the security vulnerability. Now what they did is the blogger went once again, apparently, and contacted the company once again and said, I'm going to go live with this. I'm going to write about this. And they didn't really react, right? So we're talking, the guy discovers it like 8 at night, spends the whole night looking at this, contacts the blogger in the morning. The blogger contacts the company, or they both contact the company at like 8 o'clock in the morning, when business starts. And this story gets published shortly after 1 p.m. Right? So this is not even 24 hours between discovering the vulnerability and going public, and especially telling the company. Usually you don't do that. That was questionable, I would say. You could argue that is that is a questionable thing to do. I would have waited and even if the vulnerability is gone, just give the company a bit more time. Give them a day or two. But, you can argue about how well they did this. But at the end of the day, technically, it was an ethical disclosure. The problem was fixed by the time they went public with this. And I think also ethically and morally, it was done in good faith. I mean, both of them say they did this because, they wanted to tell 700,000 people had their data possibly exposed years ago, possibly. So they wanted to tell the public as soon as possible. And I understand that. And they also have the argument that after contacting the company, they basically told them to fuck off. They basically told them, no, there's no vulnerability, or we don't know about this. They weren't engaging with the security researcher, for better or worse, and the press, as in the blogger, in a constructive way. And it didn't look like there was anything constructive forthcoming. So I understand the impulse of going live. I would have, as a journalist at that point, you have an exclusive story. And you have time. And I've been in this position before. I've done this very thing. And you have time because there's nobody who knows about it. I mean, you can give it a week or two. The only thing you have to worry about is that the company gets out a press release and kind of then everybody knows about it. So, pro tip here, if you want to be a journalist and want to do this thing, what you do is you write your story and you sit on it. And you watch this company very carefully. You give them some time. Usually you talk to them. Usually they're a bit more responsive. And you watch them. And should they publish a press release, you will still scoop everybody because your story is written. You just need to push a button and it's out. So that's a little trick you do. Also, since Jim talked about this, yes. So here's how I would have done this, and this is why I generally tell security researchers, if you have something like this, you get nowhere, and you don't know what to do. Go to a journalist you trust. Go to the press because. I mean, of course, I'm a journalist. I want people to go to the press, but also they can protect you, right? How I would have done this, I would have told the security researcher, do not contact them. I will contact them in your name. Give me the information. I'll make sure. I promise you'll get the credit. And if you want to, I can also name you, but I would not recommend this. I can always name you afterwards, and we can prove that you originally discovered this. But what we want to do is to insulate you from this company, because if they have this knee-jerk reaction where they go, we're going to sue you, they're going to have to go through me. And it depends on what country you're in, but in Germany we're very lucky that so if let's say somebody does something illegal, then goes to the press, and the press goes somewhere, and the police goes to the journalist and says, we want to know who this guy was. You legally you must probably tell the police, or you can come into a situation where you have to tell the police. But courts have consistently upheld, because of freedom of press that's enshrined in our constitution, and I think it's probably the same in the US, that you would be off. Like, this might come to a court, and the judge would probably say, if we compel this journalist to tell the police who this guy was, yes, it'll solve this situation, but that will mean that nobody, the press, can't do their job, as in, the job they need to do in society. Because, sources won't come to them, right? So for me as a journalist, one of my highest standards was always, keeping sources secure. I believe if you're a journalist, you have to be prepared to literally go to jail before telling somebody who your source was, because otherwise you can't do any serious reporting, right? And I mean, there's one thing if it's IT security, but if you're reporting on crime or something like that, right? This could be It's a very important tenet, I think, and I think generally you should go, like, if you have a journalist that you trust, they can do this. They can report this. They can make sure you get the credit, but they can also insulate you from anything, the other side might want to do. And one of the tricks they might want to do, they can play dirty, right? They can. So the problem is, in Germany, we have, like, and this is the case in many other countries, we have a law that says, there's this very famous, we call it the hacker paragraph. It's Article 202 of the Strafgesetzbuch, or as we call it, StGB, the criminal code, that has some addendums that were passed some time ago, and these are basically, what they say is that if you go and access a computer system you're not supposed to access, especially if you circumvent any kind of access control, then that is illegal. And you can go to jail for 2 years for that. And I've talked about this before because this is a problem for journalists. Because let's say if I'm a journalist and I do IT security stories, and some security researcher goes to me and says, I found this really big security vulnerability in this big website, and we have to tell the world. What you do as a journalist, you have to verify that that's true, right? And sometimes you can only do that by accessing those systems, in which case you're actually committing a crime. Now, if you're a journalist and this ever comes to court, there's a good chance, especially at least in Germany, that the judge would say, well, he obviously didn't do this to harm society. He did this to do something good for society. He wanted to make sure that the story was true. So there is a letter of the law versus spirit of the law thing, and in Germany, you can say many things about Germany, but our legal system. But I generally believe in that we have good judges, and most of the judges in that case, I think, would say, look, the spirit of the law is more important here than the letter of the law. Now, but because there is this. This crime that you commit if you do this, and as a security researcher, you obviously sometimes do this as well. You can get, you can get in trouble with the police, and this is exactly what happened in this case. So, this guy disclosed the vulnerability. We're talking this day this original story was published was the 23rd of June. Now, on the 15th of September. In the morning, this security researcher, this is what he says happened, and I can verify that he was raided by the police. I verified that with the police and the state attorney. But he says it happened like this way, which is kind of a funny story. Well, funny unless it happens to you. His doorbell rings, and people say, there's some people there saying, we want I want to deliver a package to your neighbor, right? So he lets him in, buzzes him in the house, goes to his door. The guy goes, are you Mr. Scherschel? He says, yes. The next thing he knows, he's pressed against the wall, and they're searching his home. So they raided him, and they seized a desktop computer, 5 laptops, a smartphone, and 5 external storage devices. So everything he had, like all his gear, any equipment he had to do his job. Now, he's not being indicted yet. He's just like somebody, we don't know who. Like the police and the state attorney wouldn't tell me. Somebody tipped off the police to this, that, he committed a crime. They got a judge to sign a warrant, and they searched his place and seized his stuff. He's not been indicted because the police is still analyzing the gear. But that means he doesn't have his gear. Sometimes this takes like a year, right? So this means when that happens to you, so this is something somebody can use against you, right? Understand this. It doesn't matter if he gets indicted. Even if he gets indicted and it comes to, there's a suit. It will be evaluated in court. There's a judge. Even if he wins, the fact that if you're a freelancer and somebody goes and takes all your computers away, like for a year or half a year, that's already hurting you. So. That is some of the dirty tactics I mentioned that people can do if they kind of want to. I feel like he's being punished. To me, this looks like somebody wants to punish this guy for what he did. I personally think he will not be indicted, but we'll get into that later. So the original story that happened last week that I was tasked in researching was a Golem story on Golem.de, which is an IT news site about this raid. Right? They were the first to report this raid in the mainstream, or in the this original blogger wrote about it, but I certainly didn't know about it. I know otherwise I would have written about this as well. Anyway, so it looks very much to me. It looks like somebody from, let's say, the modern solution corner. Somebody on that side of the equation is trying to use the state and its power of entering your sacred place of where you live, which is constitutional protected generally if you don't have a warrant from a judge, and the power of seizure to basically do their dirty work and punish this guy, he's a whistleblower, right? To all intents and purposes, he is a whistleblower, and that in itself is very dangerous. This is why I'm talking about this on the show, because this is kind of the thing that I think concerns everybody. Because if they're raiding security researchers, and it doesn't matter, if the guy is like making his living being a security researcher, or he's just a programmer who found this and wanted to inform the public for the betterment of everybody. If they're raiding these guys, the next thing they'll be raiding the journalists covering the story, i.e. me, and that of course concerns me, but it should concern everybody, because that means that companies who fucked up, who've treated your data horribly, and who've been negligent in their in their responsibilities, to basically cover it up with tactics like this. And all of this just because they can't fucking fess up. Of course, it's gonna have consequences, right? They fucked up. It's a big thing. It's probably gonna be GDPR relevant. They're gonna get, they're probably gonna get fined quite heftily for this. And to cover all of this up, it seems to me somebody is doing this now. And so I write about this, and this is this great story. Story gets even better. So I write about this. And, Heise has these very famous forums, right? So I like writing for Heise for one reason. If you're an IT guy in Germany, Heise is read by everybody. There's a bit of a difference between a story being on Golem and being on Heise.de, right? Heise.de, like literally, I had people from the Bundesamt für Sicherheit in der Informationstechnik, BSI, the Federal Office for IT Security in Germany, come up to me at security conferences and recognize me because they know stories I wrote. So this actually moves things. Like if you write about this, people read it. And Heise has a famous forum that is famously no holds barred. Some editors at Heise are somewhat afraid of the forum. I've always liked it. I like taking my gloves off once in a while. So we had a guy at this forum today. So I published the story yesterday, and the people commenting about this. And today, somebody alerts me to the fact that a guy who, to me, I don't know, looks very much like an insider at or around Modern Solution, knows a lot about what happened there, is basically trying to turn the discussion towards this, the way this guy disclosed this security vulnerability, which, I had already said, it's questionable. It's probably not how you should do this, and he was talking a lot about that. And then I talked about that. Retro Gamer Domi, hello, by the way. Thanks for watching. On Twitch says forum was a wild ride today under that article. Yes, I have a history of doing that sometimes. Even when I was working at Heise, that would happen more often. I wrote for them exclusively, obviously back then. So I don't know. It looked like to me this guy was turning this discussion in that direction, and I was like, I was not having it. I was replying. And then he started arguing about me because I only given the company 24 hours time. to reply, which is a lot of time in online journalism. Usually I give people 8 hours. We're also talking about a story that wasn't you. This was Golem already broke this 5 days before. All the technical facts were published since June. Right? The raid was in September. How much time do they need? And then they start arguing with me. So I wrote them an email. So in Germany, we have a thing called Impressum, which is the masthead of any website. By law is required to have that, and you have to have contact information. This is what lawyers will also use to contact you. And they had an email address on there, and I wrote to that. And I got an automatic reply from a ticketing system, got a support ticket, and then nothing. So I knew they received my email. I basically explained, I'm researching this story. I point to the Golem story as I'm researching this. What's your stance on this? And they never replied. And then, guys arguing with me, should I have phoned them or whatever? And at this point, I had already written my op-ed. The op-ed was already with Heise and ready to get published. But it made me even more mad because I feel like this is somebody from a company or close to the company. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, I literally said in the forum, dude, you shouldn't be worrying about any disclosure timelines. You shouldn't be worrying about how much time the press gave you. You should be worrying about, apologizing to 700,000 people whose fucking personal details, including bank details, home address, everything, you put on the internet and put there for anybody to see for years. You should look at this guy who, in the interest of the public, disclosed this, ethically disclosed this. Okay, they, could have done it better, but the guy is not a security researcher. He's just a programmer, right? He did everything he could do. He did pretty much right. He, messed up some of the details. You're worrying about that. You should be fucking, this guy might go to jail. He might go to jail for 2 years. Well, it's not going to happen, but, that's what, I don't know who tipped off the police, but whoever did that, those are the bad guys. Those are the guys that are doing things that are not in our interest, in the interest of the public. And you're going around, like, complaining about that guy and complaining about the press doing its fucking... I'm usually not a guy. I hate journalists who are like, oh, you did something against the journalists. Now it's personal. I'm usually not that. But let's face it. One of the reasons I'm doing this job is because I think I'm actually doing something good. I mean, I also have a huge ego, and I like to get into fights with people. It's a given. But, I also think this as a net thing, my life, I hope to think at the end of it, I did something good for society. That's why I'm doing these things. And you're not. If you're writing software where you're fucking SQL contacting some server over the internet, like publicly in plain text, and you're like putting people's personal information on there, despite us having laws now for like years that clearly tell you that this shit shouldn't be done, like then you're people like that make me very angry. I would say, like, if also like people at this company who like clearly fucked up, who did something. Anybody can make mistakes. Right? I make mistakes all the time. Everybody makes mistakes. That's not the problem. That's really not the problem. You can do some shitty code. There's, I have friends and I talk to people because of my job who are like, consultants in companies, security consultants, tech consultants, whatever. And they see shit every day. Like, people do this shit. They just like code something together. It's like held together with string and fucking gaffer tape. And it's like in production for 10 years. And it's horrible. Everybody does this. That's, all of that, yes, it shouldn't be done. It happens. That's not what makes me angry. That's not what makes me hate you. And I don't use that term lightly. What makes me fucking hate you is if somebody goes to the public because you're not... Like, first of all, somebody contacts you and you're not humble as shit and going, yeah, sorry, we did bad here. Let's give you $5,000 and a nice shirt, right? No. What you're doing is you're saying this never happened. You're trying to do shit. There's people suddenly, sending the police over, so doors get kicked in. Like, that makes me fucking angry, and that's why I had to write an op-ed. Because what also makes me angry is kind of through this stupid law in Germany, what we're kind of doing is we're making the state, the police. So I don't blame the police, right? The police has to. Like, the police, the state attorney says, crime's been committed, you have to do this, you have to raid this place. The police, they have to do their job. I have a little bit of an issue maybe with the state attorney, who should have seen that maybe, like, my question that the state attorney didn't answer was, why do you need to go there and search for evidence? Like, what evidence do you need? All of the technical information of this has been published since June. All of this has been published, right? And if you wanted the raw data, you could have gone to the guy and said, look, we're investigating this company, give us the guy would have given you the fucking data. I'm pretty sure he would. I would have. I mean, what are you investigating there? You shouldn't bust people's, like, why did you get a judge? Why did the judge sign that? The judge probably was not well informed, I would guess. But who knows? But like that's what makes me angry. That makes me really, really angry. And I think in this case, the state attorney would do well to like drop this whole investigation as soon as possible, give the guy his gear back, and then turn around and fucking investigate Modern Solution, this dumb fucking company with the dumb fucking name, this is what they did. It's almost like there's no law against this, but it's almost criminal. Well, there probably is with the GDPR. It's criminally incompetent. It's like, it's horrible. It shouldn't fucking be like that. Like, what the fuck? That's the people you should be investigating. And I mean, there will be consequences. I'm pretty sure there will be GDPR consequences, but it's not as bad as consequences as you'd have, like, you're facing jail time or something like this guy possibly. I think this won't happen. There was another very high profile case in August. I think I think I was on a bike holiday. I missed all of this. But there was the CDU, we had a big election. I talked about it on an early episode. And the CDU, the Christian Democrat Union Party, had an app for people who do like grassroots, go to door, go from door to door, canvass the neighborhood, ring on your door and say, please vote for the Christian Democrats. Those guys, they had an app to basically mark down, I think, what house they visited and whatever. And there was a independent security researcher. She looked into this app and it was horrible. Like, she disclosed a vulnerability pretty much similarly to this guy. Not as quick, but like, so the CDU and I think the company that developed the app was like mad at her. And she actually got like, the police got tipped off against her and she actually got indicted. But when the CDU went to the police and that she should be investigated, she made that public, and then there was a huge shitstorm on Twitter, in this case, I think very justified, and a lot of political pressure, and CDU actually went, we would like to retract this tip. Now, the problem is that's not how it works. So if you tip off the police, they have to investigate. You can't just say, oh, I changed my mind. That's not how it works in Germany. Like, once you kick it off, the state has to do an investigation, right? But, they couldn't pull that back, but they gave their best to like make the indictment go away. And at the end, I think some judge in Berlin, I mean, this is pre-trial, this never went to trial, right? But like, I think the state attorney of Berlin actually folded the case and said, basically, we cannot indict her because she basically got access to the database from this app. And they said, we cannot indict her because under this 202 SDGB, the hacker paragraph, you'd have to, like, it says in there that you have to circumvent access controls. But this access control was so shit that the data was basically public, so she didn't hack in there. Which is a bit of a strenuous argument, but if you're the state attorney, you can't just overturn the law, right? So I think the law should get overturned. This shitty law should get rid of that. But until we get to that point, I think the same applies here. I think you could argue that this, like, if you have an app and you put the credentials in the app so that pretty much anybody, or you can get it off the wire, pretty much anybody who has the app has the credentials. And then you have the same credentials for everybody who has the app. And I think you could freely download the app off the website as well. You didn't even have to be a customer of this company. I think you could argue that anybody could have just gotten there. And I think you can argue that there was no access control and that this guy actually didn't hack anything. And if I was the state attorney in Cologne, I would do that. Because this is a fucking PR nightmare. And I can promise you one thing. If this fucking thing goes to trial, I'll be there. I'll be covering this to the very, very end. This will not go. Nobody will forget this. This is a PR nightmare. I mean, already for a fucking modern solution, and I think it'll be a PR nightmare for the state if they actually prosecute that. This is horrible, and we need to get rid of this law. Yeah, and that's basically it. But in a wider context, it's very worrying that companies keep doing this. And actually, I'm at the end of this segment now, so I started with some black tea, but I still have some. What is this? Some nice Spätburgunder. Weingut Hof in der Pfalz. Not sponsored by them. I just like them. Been buying wine from them for like 20 years. They're my parents for longer than I'm alive, I think. So cheers. I need after this I need some wine. I mean, Jesus. The problem is that companies do this. It's getting more prevalent apparently, and in the US generally they don't have this law, but in the US and the UK they would usually cease and desist you, and then basically you have a big company who has money, has lawyers on retainer, and you're just some like independent guy, and you don't have. You don't have an attorney, or you can't pay, you can't afford to go into trial with something like this. So I think often people fold. I think it actually works to like cover this shit up because some people will just actually not go to the press. So what I would like to tell you, if you're a security researcher or if you ever find something like this, find a journalist you can trust and contact them. Like the best way would probably to contact them anonymously. I have personally, I have a whistleblower contact form that, like, if you want me to cover a story like this, if you go, I didn't say this, Private Citizen Press, the website, that's where all the show notes are. Also to this case, if you want to cover it, if you maybe from the press. Okay, all the links today are in German. I'm sorry. There's just no international coverage about this. I would provide English links if I could. Anyway, there's a contact link at the top, and that has a link to my secure contact form, which is at drop.fab.industries. Also a blog post that you should probably read, because there's things you should think about before doing this kind of thing. But, you don't have to contact me. I mean, Heise has a contact form. I think, in the UK, The Guardian. Just look for people who use secure drops. They generally know what they're doing. I used to, when I was at Heise, I used to help set up that secure drop system that they have. Something like this. And you can always start anonymously. I mean, you can still provide documents and provide the journalist with basically the proof, just redacted so that nobody can figure out who you are. And then if you start trusting them, you can always go and, reveal more of your identity to the journalist. Just be sure you trust them and that there's somebody who protects you as a source. And I mean, aside from being a member of the press, I think it's generally a good idea to go to the press, because generally, in this case, the company didn't even reply to me. But generally, I in my career, I've made I have the experience that generally, security researcher goes to a company they don't even answer, or they don't care about that. But if the press, somebody is writing for a especially an industry publication, they know, in the UK, for example, it would be the Register. If the Register knocks on your door, you generally listen, and that's maybe what the guy should have done in this case. But that's water on the bridge. I really hope he gets out of this, and I think it's very important for our society as a whole, whether it's IT security or whatever. I've done an episode about this before, whistleblowers and how they are important in that case. I think what episode was this? I looked this up every other episode. I should have a note. The website Private Citizen Press also has an episode list that has all the episodes on it. And there are many now, because this is 91. It's quite a lot. But there's this whistleblower episode, which is the importance of whistleblowers. That was on 26th of August 2020. Wasn't this about... Oh, yeah, this was about the military intelligence service in Denmark. But I also talk about, why whistleblowers are important, stuff like that. And I mean, we obviously have this discussion. We have this discussion with Assange and Snowden. Whether you like the people in general, I mean, that's the thing. I talked about Frances Haugen in the last episode, and, doesn't really matter if you like the person or if you like their message. Generally, we need to understand that these people are important for society, because otherwise, companies are just getting too powerful, and if they're not checks and balances, if the press is not able to tell these stories, and that can only happen through insiders, through whistleblowers, then these people get away with murder basically, and we can't afford that. Anyway, I hope you found that interesting. I hope that was a topic that you got something out of. Before I'm going to wrap up the show, there's some feedback. I've got a lot of feedback. This is very old feedback, actually. It's piling up. It's been piling up. I've been asking for a lot of feedback, but actually I've been also sitting on a lot of feedback. Anyway, speaking of that, if you have some feedback, privatecitizen.press, go to the contact link. You can just write me plain email if you want, but you can also encrypt it or, use the contact form. And just to make it fitting, this is actually from the feedback I'm going to talk about now, is actually from the anonymous contact form. So we have an anonymous listener, and when I say that, I mean that. I have no idea who they are. Just from the general demographic of the show, I'm gonna assume it's a guy, but who the hell knows? Anyway, our anonymous listener says, and please do that, provide feedback if you don't agree or if you have a story. If you have a story to tell, do that as well. Anyway, our anonymous listener says, every couple of years, I tighten up my privacy and security. Privacy. I was going to say privacy. It's going to be more British on the show. Every couple of years, every couple of years, I tighten up my privacy and security. It's an ever-evolving battle. Today, I have a custom uBlock origin rule set that exceeds 700 lines and hardened Firefox. I keep up with privacy-specific news that give countermeasures to the new ways it is infringed. I also have a backup strategy where nearly everything is end-to-end encrypted, although it doesn't beat a $5 wrench. And this is a reference to an XKCD, a classic XKCD comic that I've, of course, also linked in the show, which is true. Basically, nothing beats a $5 wrench. What he means is this is a comic about, doesn't matter how good your security is. If you're facing a state opponent, what they're going to do is they're going to put you in a box and they're going to beat you with a $5 wrench until you give them the password. And unless you're Daniel Craig in a James Bond movie, who can, for some inexplicable reason, stand his balls being beaten for hours, you will give up that password. Although unexplicable reason, maybe. I mean, I think basically what that movie was telling us is that Bond is very into cock and ball torture. And I mean, no kink shaming, and it's handy if you can kind of stand that as a spy. But I'd give up my password, I think. Anyway, and yet our anonymous listener continues. And yet, I nearly wrote this from Gmail on Windows. I don't have controversial political opinions, and I've never been to a protest. In the Khmer Rouge state or the Third Reich, I would probably have been a quiet bystander. This is difficult to admit, but it's the truth that I and my opinions are unremarkable and would never get me persecuted. I believe this applies to most people. My interest in privacy was triggered by insane people on the internet doxing and harassing me, not from state persecution. With that in mind, I have been making some compromises. I've started playing games again. I know that you do too. And I wanted to ask what compromises you accept in your life, especially as someone who's likely to be targeted by the police and the state. So there's an interesting thing that I keep talking about, and I think it's very important. When you're trying to defend yourself, this basically mixes together privacy and security, but it applies to both. It's basically who you're defending against, right? And, I might be targeted as a journalist by the police and the state, but there's really not anything I can do about that, right? I can, I've obviously got everything encrypted. I kind of have to. I don't think I'm required by law, but we talked about sources and protecting sources. Obviously, everything I get from source, I have to keep at least for a while, in case I have to prove. If I wrote a story and I have to prove that's what happened. So I kind of have to protect that, to protect the source. But my defense against this kind of stuff is not so much a technical one than it would be a society, like not even a legal one, because I'd basically be hoping that if I ever get indicted for something, you're not exempt as part of the press, you're not exempt from laws, but there's generally an understanding that if you do something in the pursuit of your job as a journalist, then other rules apply, right? Then sometimes, in the interest of society as a whole, a judge would let you off when, just a normal person doing that, they would probably convict of something. So, yeah, that's mostly my defense. I completely understand that if I ever get targeted by, let's say, the interior German, intelligence service, Verfassungsschutz, for example, there's nothing I can do. There's pretty much, like, I can have this most secure system ever, 2-factor, 3-factor authentication, everything encrypted, fucking Linux, everything like nailed down. They're gonna put a guy outside my house in a car who sits there. Then they watch me for a month. They know exactly when I leave for like grocery shopping, right? They break into my house and they put a keylogger under my keyboard, or like one of these that you put like in the adapter or whatever. Like, I wouldn't know. Like, there's no way I can defend against that. There's no way you can ever defend against that unless you are yourself like an intelligence agency or something. So you kind of have to, think about who you're defending against and not go overboard. I'm gonna say this a lot in response to this email. Just don't go insane with worry. I think that's the key point. Anyway, our anonymous listener continues. The obvious example is using Microsoft Windows, and I say this because I know you were a full-time Linux user in the past. You also use social media, but of course you need to publish your content, and I imagine you log out of Google after uploading things to YouTube. Okay, let's go into Windows, right? Why am I not worried about using Windows? Because, let's say we're talking about like my work as a journalist. Like, I'm not worried about Microsoft getting access to that. And that's the thing you'd be worried about, because, they're if you use an OS by somebody, you have to trust that company. At least some way, right? But even considering, if you consider Microsoft to be the ultimate evil, which I don't, I think it's especially in the past they were a pretty sleazy company at times. But they have shareholders, right? And if I did some anti-Microsoft reporting, and they used Windows to get a jump on it, know what I'm writing or whatever. If that ever came out, the impact of that, every fucking press outlet, even if it was me, nobody fucking cares about Fab from Germany. If that happened and I could prove it, every fucking news outlet would be reporting about that for a month all over the world, because they'd be like, journalists, we're threatened. So I'm not worried about that. And I'm not, also, one thing I have to say, and I've been saying this ever since I did podcasts. When I was doing Linux podcast, this is what this listener refers to a lot. I think Linux Outlaws I did for years. I always said I'm not and I said this when I started the show, and I keep reiterating it. Maybe I should reiterate this more. I mean, this is show for privacy-minded people. It's also about privacy. It's about politics and civil rights. But I am not like the person. This is specific. Like you shouldn't go. I should be like. I'm not a normal person, right? Like I'm a journalist. I live a very, very public life, right? I blog about my life in a lot of detail. I tweet about it. I'm not worried about that personally. But the way I deal with social media and the public is, I wouldn't say is not for the general public. Like you shouldn't be doing that. Like I think very few people could stand it. And so yes, for example, I use Google. We talked about this. I want to do an episode about alternative search engines. The problem is I'm a journalist, right? Like my search engine is my main tool. I'm a IT journalist. I sit in front of my computer. I search things. That's how I research things. Like no matter what Google does to rape my privacy, I need that to do my job, right? That's like, I don't know, what would be the equivalent? I'm going blank. You're a pilot and you're like, I can't use planes from Boeing and Airbus. I can't fly them there today. I don't know. Like I need this search engine, and it's much better than all the other ones. And there are ways of getting around that, and I'm always researching that, and I will do an episode about this at some point. But generally, I use Google. I use YouTube. I don't log out of YouTube. Why would I? Like, what do I care? Saying me personally, like I'm not saying you. Like I think the important thing here is you need to try to understand what is happening. Like, for example, if I'm looking into Google, I know that they're tracking me and I know what information they have, but it's me, it's Fab. I'm blogging about everything. An obvious example would be Google knows more about your health, like for a normal person. And Google knows more about your health than your doctor, because anything you have, you Google. And with that, they know where you live anyway, because, your phone, whatever. But like, they know exactly what kind of illness you probably have before your doctor has that, right? If you're a normal person, that would worry me. If that was the thing I cared about, that would worry me. I'm Fab. If I get really sick, I'm probably going to blog about this. It's going to be on my blog. Well, okay, I'm going to have to Google it first to find out some information. So Google knows it a little bit before the world, before I blog about it. Because that's just what I am. That's just how I am. I've always been like that. I've always had a very good experience with being very open. I've made literally all of my friends on the internet. Me and my wife joked that all my wife's friends are like from work or whatever, or the place you used to work. All my friends are literally in Copenhagen, Texas, London. London I used to be, but like fucking Leeds or whatever. Some of them I've never met, and I consider them very good friends because of just I've been like this. I've been like, if you listen to all the podcasts I've ever done, you know everything about me. Like, you don't need to fucking track me on the internet. You know what music I like, what cars I like. You probably have heard me talk about what porn I watch at some point. I mean, it's like I'm not a normal person. Anyway, let's continue with this anonymous listener. So my question is, how do you perceive your compromises? And have you seen your stance change with time? I used to watch a guy called Brian Lunduke in the Linux space. Lunduke steadily became more of a free software and privacy fanatic, being offline most of the time. He eventually put his money where his mouth is and even erased his highly successful YouTube channel. He credits most of this to becoming a dad and having serious problems with the promotion of Google Docs at his kid's school. So along those lines, who do you think your personal stance toward privacy could evolve in the future? How do you think? I think this listener means disclosure. Of course, I know who Brian Lunduke is. Famously had a bit of a row with him. So I used to do a podcast called Linux Outlaws. He used to do a podcast with another guy called the Linux Action Show. And they decided to pick a fight. And my call, my co-host on Linux Outlaws was like, let's ignore them. They're picking a fight because we're better and we have more listeners and they want to leech off our listeners. He was probably right. Still, I kind of, being me having a temper, I kind of did engage with Landyuk a bit. I personally, it's my personal opinion, think he's an ass. I also think his highly successful YouTube channel, I mean, yeah, probably more successful than my YouTube channel, but not highly successful. You know, Dr. Disrespect has a highly successful YouTube channel. There's something different. But I know what he means. I've seen this a lot in the Linux space where people become more and more, for lack of a better term, because this listener uses it, fanatic. I've somewhat going into the other direction, which is a reason why I don't do a Linux show anymore. I don't actually think Linux is that important. I think privacy is more important, but I'm being very careful. And I've said this in the very first episode of the show, for this not to become like a fanatic show. And I don't think there's a problem, because I'm certainly not that. I use all of these apps. I use, social networks. I think about that, and I want this to be a show from that can be helpful to anybody who's a normal user. I can do a privacy show and say Facebook is the devil and you should get off Facebook, and there's like a million shows like that, but they don't help you any, because if you are like me, 38 years old, and I live very close to my parents, but let's say you moved half the country away from your parents, and they're on Facebook because they can't use anything else. Like, what's your choice? Going like, oh, I can't use Facebook because, and then you're not talking to your family anymore. It's just not realistic, and I don't want to be like that. So I do things like I uninstalled Facebook from my phone because I thought, of course they're tracking me, and I was like, I don't get enough value out of this to justify that. Now, at some point, I started to get enough value out of Instagram, and now I have Instagram on my phone, and I have WhatsApp on my phone. So Facebook has that information, and I know that, and so it's an uphill battle, and I recognize that, and that's what I want to be the show about. That's when I talk about the off the grid stuff, OTG. I want realistic solutions. I want people to tell me what they're doing, and this is basically what we're discussing here. That is like realistic. It's, to me, not realistic to say, hey, I've removed Google out of my life completely. Like, I read a story, incidentally, on Golem the other day, of a Golem editor who's like, Google knows everything about you, but they don't know anything about me, but because I've completely removed them from my life for years now. And, writing about not using Google search engines, I'm like, how can you be a journalist and not use Google? Like, how do you do research? I was like, I think I was still at Heise at that time. I think I was going to write a CT story. I'm going to use Bing exclusively. And I'm going to start with using Bing for a week. It took me a day and a half. And I was like, I can't use this. I cannot do my job. Right? So I was like researching something. So if you don't know anything about the topic, you don't realize, because you don't find anything, and you're like, okay, there's nothing about that. But at the point where like, I know a lot about this topic, and everybody who's a journalist does this, you know a lot about the topic, but you need to, like, you're writing an article, you need to look it up again. You need to find the source that exists, what happened, you know this, but you need to find it again, because you need to link it in your fucking news story. You use Bing, and you just don't find the story. In some cases, I was searching for, because... I think they fixed it now, but back in the day, the Heise search was horrible. And if you look for my name on Heise, you see that, like, okay, actually, let's do this. I think they actually have a good search now. I promise this. I'm not doing this to humble brag, right? But this is literally what I was faced with. So I'm doing this a lot, as you can see. I'm searching my own name on Heise, and this is probably not all the stories, but there's literally 2,142 items, because I wrote like several news items a day for several years, right? And so the Heise search famously wasn't able to pick out the story that I wanted. So I had to Google search with like site called Heise.de to find my own story, to reference it. And I'm using Bing, And I can't find the story. I can't find it. I remember specifically for an hour trying to find this. And I was like, I'm not going to go to Google. I had to go to Google. And I did one search and immediately found it. So the guy in the Golem story says that mostly that's because you can't search and it's like the query's at fault. I know that was not the case. Bing was just shit. The indexing was shit. I don't know what. I couldn't find my own fucking story. Like, anyway, I'm going to have to do that again. That was years ago. Maybe there's a way now. I mean, there's also like services like DuckDuckGo. I have issues with DuckDuckGo. I'm going to go into all of this. Promise. I'm going to do a story about this. But anyway, going back to the listener. Yes. So my stance has certainly evolved. My stance evolves all the time. And I've, for better or for worse, if I would say I've learned to stop worrying and embrace the bomb or love the bomb, whatever. What's that Dr. Strangelove thing? I don't want to sound defeatist, but for us, we have to be cognizant of the fact that, yes, surveillance capitalism is here and it's here to stay. And everybody's collecting data and it's not going to get better. And to be fair, I've talked about this a lot over the last year. We made this a lot worse. With the whole COVID, SARS-CoV-2, we have some feedback about that naming thing. I'm going to get to that at some point. We made it. It's getting worse and worse all the time. I'm not saying give up the fight. I think what you're doing is good. I think being cognizant of what you want to protect and why is realistic, is good, but be realistic, right? If you're not using Windows because you don't want Microsoft to know certain things about you, the question is why? Why are you afraid of Microsoft? I mean, I don't like him either, but like, why are you afraid of Microsoft? It's like my ISP. It's probably different now with SSL, whatever. But back in the day, my ISP knows what porn I like. Why do I care? See, this is me. I'm gonna put this out here right now. I like French-made porn. All right. I don't know why it's a thing. I like it. It's a kink. Don't kink shame. Now My ISP knows. Google probably knows. Fucking Microsoft knows. Fab likes French porn. Put it on the billboard. I don't give a damn. Right. And it's hard. It's important, I think, to not go insane. Just don't So, for example, this listener writes earlier in the email. My interest in privacy was triggered by insane people on the internet doxing and harassing me, right? Right. I get that, right? If you're a normal person, I'm not worried about being doxed. It's probably going to happen sometime. People will find out where I live. What are they going to do? Show up here? What they're going to do? If they don't have a good MMA background, right? And they're much better in jiu-jitsu than me, they're going to get their ass kicked if they turn up here. Right? So what they're gonna do? I probably have the biggest knife in the room, right? What are you gonna do? Bring a gun? Okay, well, if you bring a gun. But these are internet nerds. They're not gonna bring a gun. They don't have a gun. Unless we're talking Eric as Raymond with his Glock. They're not gonna have a gun. I understand that if you're worried about, if you seriously have people following you and fucking stalking you, and especially if you're a woman, this is probably a concern for a lot of people. Protect yourself against that. But why are you not using Microsoft? Right? Microsoft's not telling these people where you live. Right? It's what you should be worried about is the security of your online accounts. You should probably have two-factor authentication so that nobody can get in there and if somebody's really after you and wants to spill your information, that's the problem. And sometimes you can't do anything. I'm a Twitch streamer. I'm probably in that Twitch league. They put that somewhere, where I live. You could probably find out where I live anyway. You have to and maybe if he's right, you have to have understand what you're comfortable with, and then maybe the solution is not being on the internet. If you want to be fucking Brian Lunduke and just don't be on the internet and just play around with your goats all day, right? You can do that. I can't do that. It's not what I do. It's just literally not my job. God Obelisk, first time chatter, says in Twitch chat, my aim is usually not to serve everything on a silver platter to a single company or institution. That's a good thing. I like that. That's good. Yeah, that's good advice. I would second that. Try not to serve stuff on a silver platter to people. Then and just have like some common sense about it, right? Go like, okay, but maybe this is now worth it for me. Right? If Facebook tracking you is shit and you get like shit ads and what. But like I would never use TikTok, right? I fucking hate TikTok. And they're fucking like the Chinese Communist Party probably tracking you. But if you get like a lot of enjoyment out of TikTok, I have friends who literally, they watch TikTok and they're laughing out loud. They're literally lolling. I mean, like, if that, like, that's a trade-off. If you get a lot of enjoyment out of it, maybe it's worth it. I don't know. Yeah, and Astrosy says London Duke is more of a GNU guy. He will have a wildebeest. No, I think he has goats. But like, that's the same thing. Like open source. People go like, yeah, use open source. But like, if you use an open source program by like one guy, if you use like Linux Mint, and for the longest time it was like, literally basically one guy who had access to everything, he can fucking put like tracking software in his OS and spy on everybody. Not saying he did. Don't want to slander any. Is this slander? I don't know. I'm not saying he did, but using open source doesn't make it better. Then your adversary maybe is not a company, but like some crazy guy. And some open source guys are pretty fucking crazy. Let's face it. I've interviewed a lot of them. Anyway, let's finish this email. Our anonymous listener says, one additional question. I was personally a Linux user too, but left it because I enjoyed games too much. I've not left Linux. I use Linux every fucking day. I just do this on Windows, right? I do a lot on Windows, to be fair. It's also because it gives me more fodder for rants and columns. And upgrading for Mint became impossible at one point in 2015. A new handheld called the Steam Deck has been announced. Valve has promised that Proton, which runs Windows games on Linux, will be compatible with every Windows game before the end of this year, including the anti-cheat components, which have historically been a problem. So this Linux question, bonus Linux question. This could actually bring us to the year of the Linux desktop. Will 2022 be the year to return to Linux for privacy, but without giving up cool proprietary games? Okay. Before we go into Linux specifically, privacy. Ubuntu did some shit for a while where they were like pretty heavily tracking people. It's not like you're on Linux. It's better. There's company doing shit stuff there as well. Yeah, as first he's this Reiser. I forgot him. Hans fucking Reiser, who fucking murdered his wife because she didn't like his No, that was not out. But yeah, this. What do you? God Obelisk says, what do you think of service like Proton? Well, that's actually another. People keep bringing topics up. It's another topic I've promised an episode on. We'll have to do privacy conscious email providers. I'm gonna talk about that and stuff you can do. Yeah. I don't know about Proton Mail specifically, but I like using like small privacy conscious email providers. I'm going to talk about who I use and stuff like that in that episode. But anyway, what was I going to say? So Linux itself it's not like the Linux companies who do shitty privacy stuff. It's not in itself better. As for Steam, I would be careful about, do a little bit of gaming stuff on the side as well, write about gaming stuff. And I would be careful about Valve promising anything. First of all, Half-Life 3. Where the fuck is Half-Life 3? Remember the fucking controller? The controller was a disaster. We're going to do all this fucking hardware, the Proton, we're going to do all this stuff. Valve is not good at delivering on promises. When it comes to Valve, I'll believe it when I see it. Valve hasn't done anything. Like they did that one card game with Richard Garfield. That fucking flopped. The only thing they do is keep Steam alive and just print money, basically, as far as I'm concerned. But could be. I don't think anything will be. I think the year of the Linux desktop will not come. And I've been resigned to this, and that's one of the reasons why I don't do a Linux show anymore. I used to be very, very idealistic when it comes to this. I used to think, and this is why I was doing Linux Outlaws, I still think it's generally a better model to develop software. I think it was better for society. And I was young and naive, and I thought it was going to take over because of this. I'm now 38 years old. I have a lot of gray hair. I've covered a lot of mileage in IT journalism, and I've realized that just because something is better, it will not, take over. There's such a thing as momentum. Microsoft and Windows just have fucking momentum. It's like there's like in these Walter Mörs stories, there are these huge titans that are basically so big their head is in space, and they can actually take their head off and leave that lying somewhere, and they'll just keep walking around. It's like that. It's such a behemoth. If they were gonna nuke it today, and it was dead, it will still continue walking for like 50 years. I don't know if that will ever happen. I see one way how Linux is going to take over the world, which is not that unrealistic, but which is going to defeat the purpose, which is Microsoft at some point is going to do a new OS. And I think it could be Linux based. I mean, there have been rumors that they've been working on that for ages. They must have prototyped this. They could develop their own kernel, but if you're doing US now, you probably base it on Linux. That could be a thing, but that would be kind of like GitHub being like this rebel coding open source thing, and then gets bought by Microsoft, right? At that point, if Linux takes over the world, but the Linux that's on 95% of computers is being made by Microsoft, have we really won? Is that really better? Right? Is it? Yeah, the development model is great, and we have freedoms of our software, but I started this show, and I said so before. On the last OCamp we had, I was on stage, and at the end, this was kind of my thesis that I think we talked about Linux Outlaws, and I was basically asked what show would you do next, and I described this show, which I did eventually. I thought Linux is not the thing that I thought privacy was the next frontier, because it's more important. It doesn't really matter so much if you're running free software. If the free software has been made by huge companies, if all your data is in the cloud, and if they have access to it, and if they're now spying on you, right? I don't care if the company that runs all that is Microsoft or Red Hat. It is bad in itself that a company has all this data, right? And they get into behavior patterns, as we have seen today by a much smaller company. But you get these behavior patterns where they basically think, they know better than everybody. They own everything, and they're really powerful. Like Google thinks they can do no wrong. They're literally their motto used to be do no fucking evil. Meanwhile, there's fucking robots, autonomous killer robots at the South Korean border that run Android or something. They literally run Google software. Right? Does it really matter at that point? So I think that's why I kind of moved my focus towards not only privacy, but also security is important, because it's part of that. You can't have privacy if you in a digital world. You can't have privacy if you don't have security, if you don't have working cryptography, and if you don't have laws where the state goes, we recognize that people do have privacy. I mean, that's how it then goes. If you log on the internet and you use any software, it's a different matter. But I believe even if we had the day of the Linux desktop tomorrow, and we all be running Linux, and Apple was using Linux, and Microsoft was using Linux, the world wouldn't change. We still have cloud software, all the data's in the cloud. I mean, they're moving to a place where you're not even okay, we moved, speaking of games, this guy talks of games. You maybe like games. We moved from a world where you bought a game on a physical medium, and then the law said it was yours, to now where you basically buy a license key in an online distribution platform, and they can take that away anytime you want. And we're moving to, hey, let's not have gaming hardware. Let's use Google Stadia, and you can just subscribe, and you have all your games in the cloud. Right? We're moving away. Like, who the fuck cares if I have the 4 freedoms in my operating system? Right? If all my work is in the cloud, if all my games are in the cloud, all my entertainment is in the cloud, everything is in the fucking cloud, and everybody's fucking spying on me all the time. Right? It used to be, hey, you're at a company and your employer can spy on you because they put a camera over your desk. Now we're all using Zoom, and fucking Zoom knows everything. Not only your employer, fucking Zoom knows everything. I sound too defeatist. Yeah. So yeah, we probably get Linux with cool proprietary games, but like, is that really like, I don't know. I don't care about that anymore. Like, I don't fucking care if I run Windows now. I care about running Windows because Microsoft is shit and can't do an operating system to help themselves, right? So I write a column in like a newspaper, and my column for that was actually published yesterday. Was about Windows 11. Like I'm running Windows 10, right? And I'm open Windows Update, and it says, "Oh, your PC is not ready for Windows 11." And could like, first of all, why the fuck do I care? I don't want Windows 11. Secondly, why is it not ready? I have 32 gigabytes of RAM. I have a Ryzen 5 high-end processor, a new motherboard. I got terabytes of SSD space. Okay, my GTX 980 is old. Yes, but that I would have had a new one if they didn't cost an arm and a leg. And I'm probably going to have to save up money and buy one pretty soon. But like, why? And then it's like, they obviously know. I think people told me now it's probably a TPM. I probably did something and disabled my TPM when I installed this because I'm an idiot when I installed this motherboard. But like, they obviously know. Why don't they tell me? Like, why this window knows, and they're like, you need to install this app, and then it will tell you. Why are you not telling me now? What the fuck's going? Also, install this fucking app. It's gonna keep nagging me to like do whatever to get Windows 11. I don't fucking want Windows 11. But the point is, that's not only Microsoft. Shall I remind you, in the days, so for people who don't know me that long, I used to do a podcast called Linux Outlaws. We produced this. I started it at a time when I was exclusively using Linux, and we're talking 2007 is when we started, and we produced this only with free software on Linux, which at the time was a minor miracle to get like your fucking, and we had good audio quality. Like I did this with an audio engineer, and he was like, this needs to sound good, and we're like fucking trying to get our USB things to work, and we got it all to work, got all like also jacked up the wazoo. Right, and then this very nice guy, Leonard Pöttering, comes along and goes, "Oh, let's fuck this all up and let's introduce a new audio system." And we were using Ubuntu at the time, and Ubuntu goes, let's use that. Or I think maybe Dan was using Fedora, I don't know. But Fedora was like, new software, let's install. Nothing fucking worked for like 2 years. Everything didn't fucking work. Now, audio on Linux is probably easier than on Windows. Because on Linux, at least, you have like, I've got like 3 USB audio interfaces right now connected to this computer. If I use it on Linux, it remembers the ID. And, you know, if I go in my audio software and assign the software, like the audio interface to tracks, it remembers that because the ID doesn't change. In Windows, every time the fucking computer boots up, it fucking randomizes the IDs. So all the interface gets switched around. Now, I have software, like I'm using a proprietary podcast producing software called, by a Danish company, it's called Hindenburg. Yes, it's named after the German airship that exploded. I don't know why. But it does that. It remembers what audio interfaces were. But that's not a Windows function. That they fucking coded that, they hard coded that in. So I don't know why I use Windows. Like any operating system is shit, really. Oh God. Okay, we're gonna wrap up the show. I'm just like, everything's shit. All companies are shit. This is what happens if I start with a story where they wanna get some guy in jail instead of just apologizing because they're shit. Anyway, let's wrap up the show. Let's talk about how you can keep it on the air. Let's get more Spätburgunder. For all the wine connoisseurs. I was thinking I was going to talk about the value for value model pioneered by Adam Curry and John C. Dvorak of the No Agenda Show. And then I remembered, John is a wine aficionado. I have no idea. I mean, Burgunder is Burgundy. I've got no idea what Spätburgunder is. Oh God, this is not Wikipedia. Come on. Pinot Noir. Of course it's Pinot Noir. Just call it Pinot Noir. I thought, of course, you used the French name. Yeah, some lovely Pinot Noir from the Palatinate. So they pioneered this, it's basically pay what you want. You get this for free, and if it provides any value to you, then, you can give some of it back. You can do that, which I prefer if you become a patron. On Patreon, there's a link, Private Citizen Press, all links are in there. You can send me a one-off payment via PayPal. Email address is producers@fab.industries. Producers@fab.industries. And also you can subscribe on Twitch, which a lot of people are doing. Which, some of the people are not doing it because of the podcast. I also stream games and stuff. But, you can do that for free if you have an Amazon Prime account, so that's cool. Let me give credit to all of the people who've done this for the show, who've made it possible, and who've supported my valiant efforts at bringing you the truth. Sound like Glenn Greenwald. So, thanks to Georges, Steve Hose, Butterbeans, Jonathan M. Heathy, Michael Mullen Jensen, Dave Michael Small, 1I11G, Jaroslav Lichtblau, Jackie Plage, Philipp Klostermann, Vlad IKN, Bandit Piata, Kai Sears, Tobias, Fadi Mansour, Rodane the Insane, Joe Poser, Dirk Didi, I imagine that's how he talks, Dirk Didi, Mode 7, Oshi, Sandman616, David Potter, Mika, Rizal, Martin, Avis, Mr. Amish, Dave Amrish, Drive Zero, Ricky M. Cam, Barry Williams, Jonathan, Captain Egghead, RJ Tracy, Rick Bragg, D. Robert Forster, Superuser, No Reply, and Astro C. And many of these people have been around since very early in the show, it's coming up to its second birthday, early next year. Very, 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 is that too many varies? No. Very loyal listeners, which I think is great. And a lot of these people saw me twice because they also do so on Twitch, which is even better. So thanks to my Twitch subscribers, Mike _the Dane, Jonathan MH_com, Sandman616, Centurio Purchase, Bacon the Pork, Mode 7 _ unavailable, L_terrestrius _Jim. I'm reading out the underscores today. Galtaran and Redeemer F. Thanks to all of you. Also, quick mention, thanks to Bytemark at bytemark.co.uk, which is a British hosting company. And ever since Linux Outlaws, which we've talked about a lot today, they have been providing a server, 2 servers, that the audio files reside on, that I use for free, and which I couldn't do the show without. So thanks to Bytemark. Bytemark and Fab Industries, a great collaboration and a proof that post-Brexit European-British collaboration works. God save the Queen. And with that, I'm signing off. And I'm going to play you out with a song called Don't Wanna Be Dead Anymore by Comer Swenson and Van Syke, which you can find on Epidemic Sound. Quick mention also to Raoul Kabzali, who did the song Acoustic Roots, which I use as a theme to this podcast, which I also like. But now gonna play you out, and I say that, and I don't have my audio player ready. That's not good. I'm gonna play you out with Don't Want to Be Dead Anymore by Comer Swenson and Van Syke. See you soon, and aim to misbehave, especially if you run into people like Modern Solution. Thanks for watching, everybody. That was great fun. Gonna pause this recording now. That was, well, great fun for such an infuriating topic. But thanks for turning up. Thanks for watching. We're gonna raid Halifa now. Halifa is my favorite streamer. She's playing Far Cry 6, shooting people and setting them on fire. And she's a lot of fun. So please say hello to Copenhagen. Say hello to Halifa from me, and I'll hope to see you again. I'll be streaming on the weekend, both days, more Icarus survival game, which I'm writing a review of. So I'm doing that. Wow, she's level 6 already. Jesus Christ. Yeah, so say hello to Halifa, and I'll be there and chat a little bit. I'm going to tune her out because I'm going to need to edit the show. And I also haven't watched her. I want to get the story. I'm watching her VODs on this, actually. But yeah, please say hello to Halifa, and thanks for watching. And see you soon, everybody. Thanks for being there. I appreciate it.